Get the hell out of there. That's not something you want to hear from an air traffic controller when you're about halfway through landing an airplane, especially when you've only got about 5 hours of flight time under your belt. I immediately shoved the throttle forward, pulled the flaps up, and turned as hard as I could. Let me back up a little and tell you how this happened. It was 1973, and I was serving in South Korea. There were no cell phones, no GPS, no computerized cockpit, and apparently no requirement that a student pilot with 5 hours of flight time and experience to avoid getting run over by an F-4 Phantom. Now, before you young pilots start screaming at the screen, remember, this was 1973 during the Vietnam War, and we didn't always do things by the book. I'd always wanted to get a pilot's license, and I found the flying club at Osan Air Force Base was only charging about $25 an hour for instructions in a Cessna 150. Osan Air Force Base is located about 48 miles south of the DMZ, and Camp Humphreys, where I was stationed, was located about 15 miles from Osan Air Force Base. So I signed up to take the training, but first I had to graduate from ground school, where you learn all the FAA regulations, the restrictions, etc., etc., etc. I graduated from that school, got my diploma, and on my days off, I started taking lessons from an F-4 Phantom pilot. Let me back up just a little. I found out later that Phantom pilots are just a little crazy. They like a little excitement now and then, and this particular pilot that I had doesn't like to give instructions to just anyone. So he puts you through a little off-the-books test first. No one told me. Our initial flight seemed pretty normal at first. He had all the controls, talking about the aircraft and what he was doing, until we gained sufficient altitude and we were over a bunch of rice fields. We were probably about 5,000 foot in altitude. Then, all of a sudden, without saying a word, he turns off the engine and puts us in a dive, in a downward spiral, a tailspin. I remember looking out the windshield at the ground going round and round and could see a farmer plowing a field with an oxen looking up at us. He abandoned the plow and oxen and started running away as fast as he could. Then, at about a little less than 1,000 feet, he pulls us out of the dive. I swear I heard a couple of rivets pop from the stress of the pullout. He looked over at me with a smirk on his face and asked what I thought about what he had just done. I knew he was testing me, so I said, "Let's do it again." Apparently, he wanted to see if I'd freak out or start crying or something to the effect, and I had heard that others had. He laughed and said, "I guess you'll be all right, but don't say a word about this to anyone." One day, weeks later, after about a half hour of flying, my instructor told me to land. After I landed, he told me to head toward the control tower. I taxied over and stopped. With the engine still running, he hops out of the plane and told me he'd be in the control tower if I needed him, and then told me to do some touch and goes on my own. I looked at him probably with a blank stare. With only about 5 hours of flight time, this was pretty much unheard of. I didn't know if I was ready for it, but I accepted the challenge. Now, if you know anything about the old Cessna 150s back then, you'd know they were slow, noisy, and we didn't have any headphones. The Cessna 150 I was flying was a small two-seat, single-engine airplane. And when I say small, I mean small. If there were two of you in it, you better be really good friends. It was basically a flying metal box with a little engine on the front, two seats, a couple of gauges, and a radio that sounded like somebody was talking to you through a tin can. Today, you climb into a little training plane and you've got screens, GPS, radios, and enough electronics to make it look like a small airliner. I finished 2 touch and goes without any problems. My landings felt smooth and I felt I was doing great. So far, so good. No problems. I was pretty proud of myself, but still kind of apprehensive. Around my 3rd touch and go, I was on my crosswind, which is right before the final approach, and I asked the tower for permission for final approach, which is where you line up with the runway and start slowing and descending. I was approved by the tower. I turned on final approach, cut power, started flaps down, and put the engine heat on. Now, one thing you have to understand, the speakers in the 150 were very tinny, like you had a tin can up to your ear. And on top of that, the Korean flight controllers were really hard sometimes to understand with their accents and broken English. I was about halfway to touchdown when everything turned to shit. I heard my tail number come over the speaker. I answered and was immediately told to do a right 270. I had never heard that term and thought, what the hell is that? What is he telling me to do? In the middle of landing? I didn't understand the instructions, so I told him to repeat. He did. I still didn't understand what he wanted me to do and asked him to repeat again, hoping he would give me some instructions on what he actually wanted me to do. He had to know I was a student pilot. Then I heard in clear English someone scream, "Get the hell out of there!" That I understood. I immediately put flaps up, hit full throttle, turned off the engine heat, and turned out to the right. And just as I did, two F-4 Phantoms came flying from my back at hundreds of miles an hour, barely missing me. They did a touch and go. All I could hear was whoosh, whoosh as they flew by. I almost became a bug on the leading F-4 Phantom's windshield. Was I pissed off? Out of all the stupid or scariest things that I did over there or ever happened to me, that was one of the scariest. How in the hell could the control tower give the two F-4 Phantoms that are traveling at hundreds of miles an hour an okay for a touch and go after they had given me, who was traveling at 60 miles an hour, permission to touch and go? Either I was truly dealing with an idiot or a new controller. To me, it didn't matter. He almost got me killed. Go figure. I landed the plane and my instructor came out to see me. I started to yell, "What the hell is going on?" But I didn't say anything. I was still kind of shell-shocked. He says, "Kind of scary, huh?" I looked at him kind of sideways and managed a small laugh. "Yeah." He then said, "Shit happens. Deal with it." I wanted to go up in the control tower and ream someone's ass big time. I let it go. Just another day in South Korea. We've been around a while. We've done some stupid things, some amazing things, and occasionally I've actually learned something. These are our stories, good or bad. I hope you enjoyed this story. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Be sure and like and subscribe for more stories, opinion, and news events. Thank you.